Hello, this is Amanda from Rise and Procrastinate, back with another video for the Fairy Stamper. Today we're going to be using a Halloween stamp for a Christmas card. So I'm going to start with ink blending my background. I'm using Distress ink in Prize Ribbon, and we're just going to be making a simple night sky. So I'm just going to, like I said, ink blend in Prize Ribbon. I am trying out something a little new to me. I've seen a lot of people use like ink stands and stuff to hold their ink pads. I'm just using a piece of that like plastic shelf liner type stuff that I cut a piece of and just setting my ink pads on it. It worked pretty well. The ink pads slid around a little bit, but not too bad. And as you can see, I'm trying to break the habit of holding the ink pad just to see how well this works, and that was kind of a hard habit for me to break. So if you don't want to spend money or don't have the money to spend on an ink pad holder, you might consider some sort of shelf liner. I kind of wonder if the rubber ones would work better, but I didn't have any of that. I had this plastic one that I had. So as you can see, I needed to re-ink that pad, and this is going to work much better now that it's nice and juicy. The ink will go on much quicker. So we are on chipped sapphire right now, so I'm going to go back and forth between chipped sapphire and Prize Ribbon here in a second to get the blending of those two colors more smooth. So we're going to go back to Prize Ribbon and blend those two colors out. And I'm not really looking for a perfect blend here because I am going to put some texture paste in over this, so not really caring if my blend is perfectly smooth. So I'm going to dip into the Villainous Potion, the newest color in the Distress ink line. And I do love this color. A darker purple was much needed in the Distress ink line. So this one, of course, is nice and juicy because it is my newest pad. So this color is going to go on much quicker. And I'll go back and forth between the Villainous Potion and the chipped sapphire for a second here. And then after this, I will add one more color, just a little bit around the edges, and that will be Black Soot. I do enjoy adding black soot around the edges to my night skies. I think that it really adds some darkness and really makes it look more like a night sky if you add just a little bit of black soot around the edges, no matter what color you've used for your darkest color in your night sky. So I'm just going to add a tiny bit here, and then we will go right back into that Villainous Potion just to blend that out and darken up my purple color just a little bit more, because I do have a little bit of a white spot there in the middle. And then that will finish up the ink blending portion. Excuse me. Just about finished here. All right. So now we're going to use the Rooftops stamp from Fairy Hugs, and this was released with the Halloween release. I'm going to stamp this in VersaFine Clair. I'm not big on making Halloween cards, but I did get this one stamp from the Halloween release because I thought it would go good with Christmas. I think that this one is generic enough that you could use it anytime, but I thought that it would look good with a Christmas stamp, so that's what we're using it for today. And sorry if you can hear my loudmouth cat in the background. He's very upset that my husband is working in the garage today and he cannot be out there with him. So he is letting everyone in the household know. So since this is the first time that I have used this stamp, I am going to have to ink it up a couple times and stamp it. I'm not really big on conditioning my stamps. I just stamp them several times until they stamp well. That's just the way I do things. If you like to condition your stamp, rub them, whatever you want to do, you can go ahead and do that, whatever works best for you. All right, so I did want to mask this off when I do some texture paste. So I'm going to stamp this on a piece of Avery removable ID labels. That's what I use for masking paper, but whatever you have will work as well. So I just inked this up a little bit. It does not need to be a perfect impression, just enough to get your outline so you can cut it out. So I'm taking that panel that we originally ink blended on, and I'm using an A2 Matting Basics die to cut my panel a bit smaller, roughly about 4 by 5 1/4. And then when I cut it, I did not cut it perfectly. It was kind of cockeyed. So some of my houses on the left side had a little bit of a blue line there. So I'm just taking a Sharpie and filling that in. So it looks like all my houses are on the bottom of the card panel instead of some of them floating in the air just a little bit. So we don't want floating houses. So just filling that in real quick with a Sharpie. I have a fine point one and a thicker tipped one. I found the fine point one better to go in and draw just a little bit of a line from the door and stuff down, and then I took the thicker tipped one and just filled in between the doors and stuff. So I'm going to take that mask and mask off my houses here, and then we will get to putting our stencil down and laying in the texture paste. All right, got that on there, good. So I'm going to take the Galaxy stencil from Fairy Hugs. I love this stencil. I have used it a lot in my videos if you've watched them previously. This is probably one of my most used stencils for sky backgrounds, galaxies, that kind of stuff. I decided to do it a little bit cockeyed here, so it looked like these stars were coming out from that center house. And then just because I've had problems with the texture paste before and paper sticker kind of masking tape, I decided to double mask my houses just in case. But my texture paste ended up being somewhat dry, so I did not have an issue with it this time. So I'm just going to mix up my texture paste here because some of it was somewhat dry on the top and then moist at the bottom, which can happen with older texture pastes. So make sure you give it a good stir before you use it. So that's what I'm going to do here. And I'm going to take out some big old globs of it and lay it at the top of the stencil, just like that. And then I've got a stencil pal, which I find very useful in getting a nice even coat of texture paste, but this can definitely be done with a palette knife and a little bit of patience. So I'm just going to spread that out evenly across the stencil. I like to go both up and down and sideways. So then I'll just take the excess and I will put that right back in the jar. And so hopefully I don't end up with a lot more that's dried out. I'm going to push that down into the bottom of the jar and keep it away from the edges. And then with all my pastes, glitter paste, texture paste, mousse, whatever you've got, I like to make sure that I wipe around the edge of the cap or the edge of the jar and then put some saran wrap over it to try to keep it from drying out. But because that jar is probably over halfway used, that's why it's starting to dry out a little bit. It's not because it wasn't properly sealed or because the saran wrap's not doing its job. It's just because it's got a lot of air in the jar just naturally because it's almost toast. So I'm taking some Fairy Hugs glitter powder in the translucent pearl, and I'm going to liberally spread it all over, or sprinkle it all over this panel, over the texture paste. And the hope is that it sticks to the texture paste, and as it dries, it stays on the texture paste. I think because my texture paste is somewhat dry already, it didn't stick as well as I had hoped. The other thing you're going to note is that it stuck to the Distress ink and the VersaFine Clear where I'd stamped the rooftops, and that's fine. It's going to, because those inks are still wet. But when your texture paste dries, you can take a brush, and you'll see me do this later, and you can brush it off. We'll talk about that in a minute. All right, so I am taking my sentiment that says "With Love at Christmas." This one is actually called, I believe, "With Love at Christmas." No, Love at Christmas. That's what that's called. And I heat embossed it in white. And then I'm just going to take a couple of the colors that I used when I ink blended and ink blend over it just to give it a little bit of color. So I used Prize Ribbon, Chipped Sapphire, and then I believe off screen I did actually go in with that Villainous Potion, just what was left on my brush, and ink blended that a little around the edges after I die cut it. I just didn't show that on screen. So we're just going to ink blend a little bit. I wanted to ink blend just far enough where I thought that I would die cut it. I wasn't really sure what dye I was going to use, hence why I used such a big piece of paper. Normally I wouldn't stamp on such a large piece of paper and waste the edges like that, but I wasn't sure what dye I wanted to use. So I did pick out the Gilded Nested Rectangle set and chose, I believe this is the second to the smallest, but don't quote me on that. I don't remember. Usually I write it down and I didn't this time. So that is how it looks. And then like I said, off screen, I took the Villainous Potion and just kind of ink blended around the edges. So here I am wiping off that excess glitter. Not as much stuck to the texture paste as I had hoped. Like I said, I do have some sparkle on there. I don't know that it's going to show up very well on camera for you, but I do have some sparkle that's stuck, but I'm just wiping off a lot of the excess glitter. That way whoever receives this card does not get a glitter bomb in the mail. So I'm just going to pop up that sentiment with some foam tape. We will cut a lot of this out for you so you don't have to watch all this. I just wanted to make it clear that I did pop this up on some foam tape. All right, so now here is where I made some mistakes. Oh, nope, I guess we're going to mat this on some black first. So I do use Nouveau Deluxe adhesive, which is my glue of choice. These bottles don't hurt my hands. I do have nerve problems in my hands, so I really love these bottles. I keep them and I put other glues in them. Mostly I use the Nouveau Deluxe, but I do use like the Distress Collage medium, so I'll put some of that in there. But these bottles definitely don't hurt my hands, so if you have problems, I suggest giving the Nouveau Deluxe a try. All right. So I'm going to put this on a card base as well. And I do like to leave a little bit of a white border. So this is going to have a little bit of a white border. And then I decided, once I get this on here, that I wanted those windows to glow yellow, like the houses had people in them with lights on. So I took out a yellow gel pen and I started to fill in the windows. And this gel pen died after I filled in like 3 windows. And I couldn't for the life of me get it to work. I tried every trick in the book. I tried to write on my hand. I tried to use a lighter. I tried the dip it in a glass full of warm water. I tried everything and it wouldn't work. So then I filled it in. I filled them all in with gold gel pen, which I really didn't like. My hands were shaking. I kind of got out of the lines and it looked like poo. It looked horrible. And I tried to fill in one of the doors with a red gel pen and I messed that up. You can kind of see maybe on camera when I move those houses that it kind of like I tried to cover it up and it smeared and it looked horrible. Anyway, so I stamped another one of these and I was just going to cover up the houses. Problem is remember when I cut that panel crooked and my houses were floating on one side? Well, if I covered it up, the houses would be crooked. And so either if I put it on straight, I either show some rooftops on one side, or if I line the rooftops up, then I have like this black edge on the bottom, and it just looked funny no matter how I did it. So what I decided to do here was to offset the houses. So it looked like I had 2 rows of houses. This way I'm covering up the windows that I didn't like, and it kind of looks like I have more of a dimensional look here because I have 2 sets of houses. So I can put my houses on straight and I'm covering up the mistake that I made. So that's what I decided to do because I wasn't starting over at this point. Not by a long shot. That was not happening. I wasn't throwing this card away after as much work as I put into it, and I wasn't starting over. So now I'm just going to glue this down. I'm leaving the windows blue because I ink blended up blue. I probably should ink blended yellow over them because then it wouldn't have been, then I could have had my windows lit up like I wanted them to, but I didn't think about that at the time. I just ink blended blue over it so it matched. But anyway, and now I get more of a dimensional look, and I covered up the ugliness that I had accidentally made. So that was my fix. Shh, Quincy. Sorry, the cat's screaming at me again. You can probably hear that now. All right. So now I'm taking some glossy accents and putting it along the rooftops, like where the snow would lay, because we're going to add more glitter. And for those of you that know me, you know that I don't like loose glitter. It's not my favorite thing in the world. So what possessed me to use so much loose glitter on this card, I have no idea. I guess Christmas. To me, should sparkle, so that's what I'm doing here. So I put it along the rooftops, on top of the chimneys, that kind of stuff, where snow would lie if it were to snow. And then I'm just going to cover the tops of this with glitter, and it's going to stick in that glossy accents much better than it stuck in my my paste. And then I set it aside to dry. And then again, I took that, once it was dry, I took a brush and I wiped it across to make sure all the loose glitter fell off, so I'm not sending somebody a glitter bomb. And this is what we got. And I'm going to hold this closer to the camera so you can see the sparkle on the rooftops. It's really pretty, guys. So if you don't like loose glitter falling off your cards, that's the way to add it, and it won't fall off so much, especially if you take a brush and wipe it off over your trash can first. So that finishes my card for today. I hope that you enjoyed it. The links are in the description box below for all the supplies. And as always, have a great day.